Hello, everyone, and welcome to, I can't believe it, episode 35 of the new MDs, mothers, doctors, and scientists. And the integrative physician is in. And I am your host today, Dr. Michelle Perro. I am the CEO of GMOscience.org, a 501c3 nonprofit that I founded with two beautiful women, Debbie Friedman and Dr. Mirto Ash, back in 2014. I'm also the co-author of What's Making Our Children Sick. So thank you. And that is Ann Temple, our wizard behind the scenes. So we're going to get right into our show today, and we've got something special for you. We're talking about, I don't know if it's my favorite topic or kind of thorn in my side, which is GMOs and what's really hidden in your food. And it's my honor and pleasure to bring back friend to GMO Science, my friend and colleague, previous podcastee, I think it was episode 27, Howard Vlieger, a regenerative organic farmer, researcher, soil consultant, all things GMOs. And Howard, can welcome first of all to our show today.
Thank you, Michelle. It's always a pleasure to work with you. I learn something every time I listen to you.
Likewise, my friend. Bouquets back at you. And before we launch into this hot topic, which I think is a hot topic, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
I'm privileged to live on the family farm where I was born and raised. My folks moved on this place in 1959. In 1960, they purchased the farm from Bill and Margaret McDonald, so I literally live on old McDonald's farm. And we direct market beef, pork, chicken, turkey, lamb, eggs. When I'm home, I milk a cow by hand every morning. And we focus on raising food rather than commodities on our farm. And I became a student of the soil in 1989, and that journey will end until they put me in or on the soil when I depart. It's a journey of a lifetime.
I'm going to change, I think, my moniker to, student of GMOs. I think I've been studying this topic for 25 years, and maybe now I'm just trying to get the hang of it. But as you know, every step forward is like a step back. We learn something, and then there's a bunch more to learn. It's sort of this constant seesaw of new knowledge as we keep moving forward.
I have no problem admitting the more I know I don't know. And that applies to literally every subject.
Echo that, Howard. Well, I think we're going to get right into our topic today, and we're going to be discussing GMOs, but with a little bit of a twist. And Howard, I'm going to leave that up for you when we're talking. I will be interrupting you periodically because just in case if there's any clarifications, or maybe not, we'll see how it goes. But I know you're going to get into GMOs in this talk, and I know you have a PowerPoint for us, but can you just define for people listening who maybe don't have the entire hour to hang with us, can you just find what is a GMO again for listeners? Some of you know, some of you don't.
First, I want to, and this will come out in the presentation as well, but I want to give due credit to all the amazing people I've had the blessing and privilege to be mentored by. The good Lord has blessed me continually, and that happens literally everywhere I go, where I connect with more and more people. And my focus is to try and make this complex subject as elementary as possible. GMO, genetically modified organism, genetically engineered organism, it's interchangeable. They basically are altering the DNA of the plant and regrettably now mammals, including humans. And they're doing it in an unnatural manner and fashion. And there's two generations of this disruption that they're causing. One is a shotgun type approach, which that will be a little better explained on one of the slides that is in the presentation. And then the latest technology, they refer to it as CRISPR. and they claim it to be more precise, which is kind of an oxymoron because they said, well, the first generation manipulation or mutilation, however you want to look at it, was
Mm.
precise as well. So they're messing with nature and in essence playing God, in my opinion, and they don't know what they're doing and they have no control over the side effects. And as long as they refuse to accept that reality, they never will make the technology useful, because if you don't fix what isn't working and don't even recognize it, I don't know how it ever could become useful. That'll make a little more sense when we get into the presentation.
You know, thank you, Howard. So I just want to clarify, listeners, that genetically modified organisms, GMOs, is interchangeable with genetic engineering. And now industry has created new terms because people are so turned off by the word GMO, such as symbio or bioengineered. You'll hear these terms, but they're all referring back to genetic modification, where we're altering the DNA for a desired effect. Maybe it's herbicide tolerance, maybe it's a medical effect, but this is what we're doing. So without further ado, why don't we just get into your presentation today for listeners? I think, Anne, if you don't mind getting that up there. And I am going to be your advancer today, Howard.
Okay, great. Um, my learned friends tell me I have to provide standing. As I mentioned, I became a student of soil in 1989 when we switched our farm to what was known as alternative at that point in time. Today it's called regenerative. I am working on my degree. I am in attendance at Hard Knocks University, and my field of focus is I apply common sense and critical thinking to pretty much everything I deal with. And I'm extremely blessed that the good Lord has given me the ability to see what you look at. In 1992, I started working as a crop and livestock nutrition advisor. I've been blessed to work with family farmers all across the US and Canada. 1994, I started researching and studying everything I could about GMOs. In 1997, I started doing on-farm research. I am the primary coordinator and co-author of a scientific study that was published in 2013, which we will look at what that demonstrated to us a little further on in the presentation. Next, please.
Okay, why doesn't it want to go next? Let's see.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, as I mentioned, genetically modified organism or genetically engineering, it's interchangeable, one and the same. The one of the lies that's been told is well, this just is just an accelerated version of hybridization. That is completely and totally untrue in every way imaginable. Next, please. This is a list of some examples. It's by no means complete because regrettably there continues to be more products come into the market now, and again, they're not identified in a clear manner or fashion, but the first GMO we had in crop production was BT. Bacillus thuringiensis is a naturally occurring bacterium from the soil. They figured out a way to genetically engineer that and put it in cotton, corn. They've inserted it into numerous crops. Another insecticide that they genetically engineered is known as CRW, or corn rootworm. Both of these technologies have accelerated the development of resistant insects. The biggest factor for adaptation of genetically engineered crops has been the glyphosate resistant crops, or herbicide tolerant crops, they're also referred to. We have glyphosate resistance corn, soy, cotton, canola, sugar beets, alfalfa, creeping bent grass, also wheat, but thankfully that's never been hybridized, or excuse me, put into the market. It has been developed and has escaped and contaminated wheat, but it's never been officially marketed. There is a Liberty Link wheat now. It's they hide that fact. They say, well, it's drought tolerant, but it's actually tolerant to the glufosinate herbicide. And then some of the original GMOs in the food supply The golden rice was the poster child, which still technically is not on the market because of its very poor performance agronomically. The papaya, they claim we needed that in order to save that crop. But all they need to do is implement proper soil biology and nutritional approaches that are non-injurious to the soil, and they wouldn't have the disease problem. But and the flavor saver tomato, that was the first GMO to ever hit the marketplace from a food aspect in the US, and it didn't last long because it tasted like cardboard. Next, please. Okay, genetic engineering and the gain of function. Next. Genetic engineering. Next, the definition is it is the modification and manipulation of an organism's genes using technology. Next, please. Gain of function. Next, please. Medical research that genetically alters an organism in a way that may enhance the biological functions or gene products. Next, please. Is there really a difference? Next slide, please. Injectable GMOs. Next. Is an mRNA experimental gene therapy an injectable GMO? Next. Dr. Andy Wakefield says absolutely. Next, please. The mRNA is a very dangerous version of genetic engineering. Next, please. How would the public react if they realized that gain of function, which is a term that has become known to many because of all of the damage that's been caused with the manufactured epidemic called COVID, but how would people react if they realized that this gain of function technology that nobody recognizes as a positive thing is in fact what is being done to develop these crops for the commodity market that are entering into the food supply? And as we know, some crops have been altered with this gain of function technology to go directly into the food supply. Next, please. Is it time we rephrase this discussion and quit calling it GMOs and start saying, wait a minute, that's gain of function? Next, please. So what's the motivation for GMOs? I had a full service seed, fertilizer, chemical, custom application business in the early 90s. And I was on the front line of the implementation of the GMO seed. I worked for a seed company. I had a dealership. I was winning awards every year for increased sales before the genetically engineered seed came into being. So I was in the front row, seeing exactly what happened. Next, please. The technology fees. Next, please. This is the royalty charged on a bag of GMO seed by the biotech company that owns the patent on the GMO seed. Next. In 2010, I decided to sit down and do the math. And by the way, this was the last year you could do this because after that, the industry hid the numbers so you couldn't tell the difference. But I sat down and I figured out how many dollars of total monies this would generate if all of the corn, soybeans, cotton, and canola acres and sugar beet acres in the US were the latest and greatest genetically engineered crop. Next, please. That year we had 87.9 million acres of corn planted, and the technology fee equated to $60 an acre based on the seed planting rate. Next, please. So that generates $5,274 million. For soybeans, we had 78.9 million acres. According to USDA's number, the tech fee, again, was $24 per acre. So that was just under $1.9 billion. Next, please. The cotton, we had 10.9 million acres of cotton, according to USDA numbers, and the tech fee was $78 per acre. So that kicked in $850 million and change. Next, please. Advance, please. In 1993, before we had GMO cotton, a 50-pound bag of seed had a retail price of $40 to $60 per bag. Next. In 2010, the GMO cotton had 230,000 seeds per bag, which would weigh from 38 to 46 pounds, depending on the size of the seed. Its retail price next was $159.99. Next, the technology fee was $412.20 per bag. Next, the seed treatment, which is a combination insecticide, fungicide, pneumaticide, was $125 a bag. That gives us a total of $697.19 versus $45 to $60. Next, please. By 1994, or excuse me, 1994, it was $8.40 per acre to plant the cotton. By 2018, which is the last year that I actually updated these numbers, was $100.90 per acre for the cotton farmers to put in the crop. Next, please. Continuing on with the tech fees, the sugar beets that year, we had 1.2 million acres. The tech fee equated to $80 per acre for 96 million. Next, the canola, we only had 1.2 million acres, so that kicked in 9 million. Next. So a subtotal of all the crops in the U.S., not including the Roundup Ready alfalfa, next, is just shy of $8.7 billion. Next, I have been privileged to speak in Canada many times, so I added in the acres of canola planted in Canada that year, according to Stats Canada, and the tech fee, that chips in 1.2. So we have $9.9 billion technology fee in 1 year for North America. That's not the seed, that's not the fertilizer, that's not the chemical, that is only the technology fee. Next. What might be the motivation for these companies to develop and sell these GMO seeds? Next. This is my elementary demonstration slide, if you will, of how to visualize this genetic alteration that they're doing in a lab. If you will envision each of the dots in this circle as a molecule in the DNA makeup of that plant, first generation GMOs, they're blasting into this DNA with a shotgun type device the genes that they want to insert into the DNA makeup of this plant. They have no control over where it's going to hit, where it's going to land, or what it might affect, what it might displace. Next slide, please. I used to say they had a 1 in 100,000 chance of putting it in the same spot twice. I was blessed to meet Dr. Toyoka Suduka in Eastern Washington State way back when I was doing the GMO education presentations there to help fight the I-522 or support the I-522 initiative for labeling. And she raised her hand and politely said, "Howard, your odds are way too good. It's 1 in a trillion to 1 in 100 trillion that you can put it in the same spot twice." And you're going to see why that's important in a second. Next, please. The second generation next of GMO genetic engineering, as I mentioned before, is the CRISPR. Next. This is a snip and insert approach, which they claim is much more accurate, but they do nothing or can do nothing to control the interspatial relationship that happens when they pull something out and put something else in. So the end result is they are going to cause alterations in the final outcome of whatever it is they are genetically engineering. Next, please.
Should I leave this one up, Howard? I kind of was quick on the draw.
No, this one, the next. Okay. This, for those who want to take a deep dive on how this got wrongly and actually illegally implemented in our country, I would recommend that you read Stephen Drucker's book. He's an attorney and he sued the FDA, and it's an excellent read that tells you the truth about how this was implemented. Next, please. As I mentioned earlier, I have been blessed to work with some of the premier scientists in the world on numerous topics. Dr. Arpad Pusztai, I was blessed to start being mentored by him in 2003. In 1999, he did the first ever scientific study on a GMO crop. He believed it was going to be positive going into this study. It was the BT potato. And he thought, well, if we can have this BT, it's going to enable us to lower the amount of insecticide we use, and that will be positive. Next slide, please. The thing that he helped me understand is that the process of the genetic engineering, there was an early debate about, well, it's because they're inserting the BT or they're inserting this or inserting that. No, he said, Howard, I have the same potato. I have two identical potatoes. I take a gene out of this potato and I put it in this potato, and it's already there. So it's not going to change the makeup of that plant. He said it is the insertion process that causes the high likelihood of the development of a foreign protein in the fruit of that plant, greater than a 90% chance. Well, it's not totally the same, but let's shift people's thinking to foreign protein and spike protein as both being an unnatural presence in the organism that they exist in. Next slide, please. We know that 70 to 80% of the cells of our immune system are in the digestive tract of the mammal. Next. This is my best attempt to help people grasp what happens when this foreign protein enters the digestive tract. This brick wall is 2 feet thick and 10 feet high. That represents a foreign protein in your digestive tract. The man pushing against the wall is your immune system. Your immune system is to be there to keep you healthy, to push out anything that's not good for you. So imagine what happens that you consume a foreign protein, it's in your digestive tract, your immune system is working 24/7, 365 to do everything it can to get rid of this foreign protein. Well, what happens to the strength of the man after pushing against this brick wall with all his might 24 hours a day? Next slide, please. With 85% of the processed foods in the grocery store in the US containing these foreign proteins from GMO foods, are we witnessing an increase in autoimmune issues in our country? I realize that's kind of a dumb question, but again, trying to put this on a very layman's elementary basis so we can grasp what's going on. Next, please. In my journey along the way, I've been privileged to work with countless family farming operations throughout the Midwest and into parts of Canada. Along the way, when the GMO feedstuffs, corn and soy, entered the feed supply, we started seeing digestive issues in the pigs that were consuming the GMO feed. This is a picture of a healthy pig stomach. Next slide, please. This is a picture of a pig stomach that was fed a drug-free diet, but consuming GMO feed. Well, you can see the inflammation and irritation by the redness demonstrated in the stomach. Next slide, please. This is another drug-free fed, GMO-fed pig stomach. And if you look close, you can see some ulcers that have bled and then healed over. Next slide, please. This is a pig stomach from a pig that ate GMOs that was on antibiotics most of its life. And you can see that the irritation and the inflammation, the antibiotics did their job to suppress that irritation and inflammation, but it didn't stop the ulcerations. And thinking way back to when I first shared these pictures with a group of farmers in South Dakota. There was one gentleman in the room, held up his hand, and he worked for the feed company, and he said, "There's no way that pig should be alive." He said, "I've never seen anything that bad." And I said, "Trust me, he's not." Next slide, please. This all led up to our doing a scientific study. I shared this information, which I was calling circumstantial coincidental, with Dr. Elaine Ingham in 2003. And she said, "Howard, you need to do a study, set up the protocols, and see if you can prove what you're witnessing anecdotally." So we did. We took 84 pigs. We actually had 168 pigs. We divided them evenly into two groups by sex and by weight. We drew numbers out of the hat, and they were fed non-GMO corn and soy and GMO corn and soy diets for their lifetime as a meat animal. When they were harvested for the meat, we collected all of the viscera. And the only thing we didn't have from the pigs was their brain and their kidneys. And we had two licensed practicing veterinaries analyze all of these organs. We weighed as many of them as was appropriate and collected all the data. Once again, this is a non-GMO, drug-free fed pig. There was no antibiotics used in this study. And as you can see, it has an overall skin tone color. Next slide, please. This is a pig from the GM fed group. As you can see, there's a lot of redness, a lot of irritation and inflammation. Again, this is caused by that foreign protein. Next slide, please. Next slide, or next, please. Okay, the statistical results of the study. The GM-fed pigs had a 260% increased likelihood of having severe inflammation in their stomach. For the males, it was a 400% increase. For the females, it was 220% increase. Next slide, please. The GM-fed female, the weight of their utera was 25% abnormally heavy compared to the average utera weight of the non-GM fed. The Dr. Arpad Pushtai, when I sent him the protocol of the study, he said to me, "You have to weigh the pigs every week." And I said, "Well, we're going to weigh them in the nursery. We'll weigh them out of the nursery, and we'll weigh them when we're finished." He said, "No, you have to weigh them every week." I said, "Dr. Pustai, this is not a laboratory. This is out here in the real world. That's not exactly feasible." He said, "You will weigh these pigs every week." So we figured out a way to do it. Well, when they were little, we picked them up, put them on the scale, wrote down their number, wrote down their weight. But when they got bigger, next slide, we had to run them through a simple maze. The pigs were always in the same pen. They were in pen A, B, C, and D. Once a week, the helpers would come in. They would open the gate. They would run them down the alley. They would run them through this simple maze. They'd write down their number. They'd write down their weight. And they didn't know who was fed what, but they were always in pen A, B, C, and D. Pen A and pen B would go through this simple maze easily and without hassle. And it was kind of playtime. Yippee, we get out and kick up our heels and run around. The pigs in pen C and pen D couldn't navigate this simple maze on a weekly basis. As soon as they got in confined quarters, they started fighting and biting and picking on one another. Next. And next. I'll let you guess which pigs were fed the GMO feed. Pen A and pen B that did this simply and without issue. In the pigs in pen C and pen D, not only could they not navigate this simple maze on a regular basis, and they fought when they got in confined quarters, when they were back in their normal surroundings, they always exhibited a level of listlessness. We didn't anticipate this. And the editor of the journal was dug in his heels and would not even let us mention this. Dr. Carmen went on to do a study with rats with the protocol set up to measure these behavioral differences with both GM corn and GMO soy. I can't tell you the results of that study because they're likely never to get published because of the university hijacking, in essence, the data because Dr. Carmen continued to tell the truth. But I asked people the question. In 1996, before 85% of the processed foods in the grocery store contained foreign proteins from GMOs, how many people, especially children, did you know that were on medication for ADD, ADHD, and other behavioral issues compared to what it is like today, when we have 85+% of the processed foods containing these foreign proteins? Next slide, please. Along the trail, there have been many people that have contributed very interesting information to what happens when the animals are naturally exposed to this. Dr. Huber received this slide from Gilbert Hostetler. He had ears of corn in seed feed bags in the warehouse, setting side by side. There was non-GMO corn in the one bag and GMO corn in the other bag. And as you can see, the mice completely ate the non-GMO seed and didn't touch the GMO seed. Next slide, please. I showed that picture to a group of farmers in Ohio, and one of them took it upon himself to do his own experiment. He went and borrowed an ear of corn from his neighbor's triple stack GMO cornfield and put it on a nail on that tree, and put one of his non-GMO ears of corn on another nail, and took this picture 9 months later. Next slide, please. I never give this presentation without highly recommending the best book, in my opinion, for children's health ever written in the world, Dr. Pero, What's Making Our Children Sick? And I look forward to the not too distant future when her next book comes out, What's Making Our Children Well? Next slide, please. Now I have a question for people to ponder. What is the number one ag export item that we export from our country each and every year in the U.S.? The one item that we export more pounds of this one item than any other item. Take a guess. Next slide. It's soil. And you can verify this on your own with the link that's there. 4.7 metric tons per hectare, which when you equate that down to an acre, which is number we use, it's 2.09 tons per acre. We lose 1 pound of topsoil for every bushel of corn produced in the traditional commodity production system. Next slide. Dr. Pero's book illustrates the problem. I many times give away Dr. Pero's book and Gabe Brown's book, Dirt to Soil. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. Next slide, please. This is mandatory reading for anyone wanting to have children. I was given the first copy of this book in 2011. Dr. Huber and I were at a conference in Canada, and he gave me the copy that was given to him when he was in the UK the previous month. I read the first 4 chapters on the plane ride home, and this book talks about DDT and DDE, PCBs, tebestrol, and dioxin, just 4 toxins. They're all very effective endocrine disruptors. When I got home from the airport, I called Dr. Huber. I knew he'd be driving to his home from the Boise airport after having read the first 4 chapters. I asked him, I said, well, if I interpret this book correctly, I believe someday we'll make the statement that glyphosate makes DDT look like mouthwash. And I know we're not talking about glyphosate today, but Dr. Huber's response was absolutely, I couldn't agree with anything more because of how widely and indiscriminately the product has been used. People need to purge their diet, clean up their system, and Dr. Pero has, in my opinion, the best protocol for that. for a minimum of 6 months prior to conceiving children if we want to have healthy children again. Dr. Pustai told me, when you see the second generation of babies born after the introduction of the GMOs into the food supply, you are really going to wonder what is wrong, because you will see full manifestation of the damaging effects of this untested technology. And that's right where we're at today. Next slide. This is another excellent reference for whatever level you're at. If you're a scientist or if you're a mother or a happy homeowner, wherever you are, this is an excellent reference to educate yourself and educate others. It's critical that we educate others, because the powers that be are doing everything they can to keep us from seeing the truth. Next slide, please. So, my assessment: why are people, especially the children in our country, so unhealthy? Next. Next. Number one is the lack of nutrient density in the food supply. This is the result of years of brainwashing and hijacking of our true basic concepts of crop production, and it's been done on purpose and by design. Next. The number two problem for the ill health is the foreign protein in the food supply, both for two-legged and four-legged mammals. Next. The contaminants in the food and the water, whether it's the chlorine, the glyphosate residue, the heavy metals, you name it, that's number three. Next. The injected toxins. Again, we're focusing on GMOs today, but many in your audience are going to understand the damaging effects of all of the injected toxins that are especially given to children. Next, please. The EMF, the electromagnetic frequencies, as you so excellently have pointed out many times, Dr. Pero, we're in a pool of contaminants, and it's scary what history will tell us about the damaging effects of all of this, especially EMF. Next, please. And the lack of exercise. There's survey after survey after survey that shows that farm kids have the least amount of allergies and are healthier. Well, get outside and get to work. Don't sit on the couch. Don't sit in front of a screen. Move. Next, please. This is interactive. This is typically my final slide in my presentations. Do you recognize the names in the center of the circle? When you see AstraZeneca Syngenta, have you ever heard an advertisement for a commercial on TV or in a magazine that says, if you can't afford your medication costs, contact us. We have a program to assist you. Commercial sponsored by AstraZeneca Syngenta. Have you ever heard of atrazine? One of the oldest herbicides used in crop production in our country, made by AstraZeneca Syngenta, who is also coincidentally the number 4 producer of genetically engineered crops in the world. When you see or hear bear, what's the first thing you think of?
Poison.
What if you have a headache? Aspirin. Well, there's also Bayer Crop Science, the makers of Aztec insecticide and Liberty herbicide, and Bayer will likely go down in history as making the dumbest investment ever when they paid $63 billion for a company known as Monsanto. But before they bought Monsanto, how many people were aware of the fact that Pfizer Pharmacia Upjohn was the parent company of Monsanto? So we have established the fact that all these companies in the center of the circle are in the pharmaceutical, chemical, and GMO seed business. So we're going to start with chemical. Next, please. Question for you, Dr. Pero. Give me one word you would use to describe a chemical that kills a weed or an insect, and you're describing this chemical to a 5-year-old child. What one word might you use?
I would say poison again.
Okay, we're using poison to raise crops next. What do we raise crops for?
We consume them.
Okay, next and next. Cereal and grain. What do we feed the bulk of the grain to?
Cattle.
Livestock, next. So, in using this poison on the crop, if there were to be a residual effect, do you think it'd be positive or negative?
I would say negative.
So, if there's an adverse effect of using this poison on the crop that could affect the grain and could affect the livestock, if your livestock don't feel good, who do you call for help?
We call the veterinarian.
Next. When the veterinarian comes and looks at your livestock, what might he recommend you give them to make them feel better?
Some type of drug, antibiotic, or a pharmaceutical.
Next. What if we want our livestock to grow faster so we can lower our cost of production? What might we give them?
We give them hormones.
Next. What do we raise livestock for?
We raise it for companionship, but for food.
Next. Who eats the meat?
We do, and our children.
Next. So if there's an adverse effect of using this poison on the crop that could affect the grain, that could affect the livestock, is there a possibility it could affect the meat?
100%.
If the people eat the meat, where do they go for help? Next.
The doctor.
After you go to the doctor, where might the doctor send you with a piece of paper with the doctor's autograph on it? Next.
Pharmaceutical.
Does this present a positive cash flow for the companies in the center of the circle? The first time I did this illustration was on a tear sheet in the VFW hall here in South Dakota in 2003 for a group of farmers. While the names in the center of the circle have changed slightly because of concentration and consolidation, the concepts are still the same. And in 2003, I did not want to believe this was anything more than a coincidence. Today, there's way too much evidence to believe anything other than the fact that it's a business plan. Next. That's my presentation. I welcome any questions.
Well, Howard, let me stop the share. Well, first of all, thank you for, I think, this enlightenment, because knowledge is power, and you need to know what you eat, what you ate, and what your animals and what your food ate, your plants and your animals, what they ate. So in order to maintain our health, as you have clearly elucidated today, we really need to be savvy consumers and support a very specific kind of return to what we used to do, which is organic regenerative farming. But I want to clarify a few things you said for listeners. And this couple things struck out. GMOs are not just in our crops, genetic engineering, whatever you like to call it, bioengineered. It's also in our pharmaceuticals, like the mRNA technology that you shared with us. These GMOs are also being used for geoengineering. And I'm going to talk about that next month, Howard, GMOs and geoengineering. So stay tuned for that. And they have kind of been inserted in every aspect of our lives. As you heard Howard said, they're not precise. They are not exact. They have untoward downstream effects. We have messed with the blueprint, the architectural blueprint, and we want to know why people are sick. But you also said something else, Howard, that I would love for you to clarify. You talked about gain of function. And for those of us who are integrative health practitioners, we know that we've been helping people to gain their health back because there are microbes out there like Lyme disease, for example, that are gain of function. So maybe you want to say another couple of words on how industry, how our government even has manipulated microbes to produce, let's say, a genetic trait, Roundup resistance, or even in other harm's way. I don't need for you to be an expert on what we're doing in terms of bioweaponry, but it's of the same plane when you manipulate microbes for a desired effect, whether it's for war or whether it's for our food. We have altered one of the key aspects of the biologic terrain. We live in a web. And when one piece of that web, it's like being on a mobile, gets shifted, the entire mobile can shift. So maybe you want to say a couple of words about that. Any thoughts about that, Howard?
The gain of function, as I titled the presentation, is GMO 2.0 in essence. It's the description and the application, implementation, and outcome. There's no difference. They're one and the same. And now they're coming at us with the lab grown meat and the symbio milk and the symbio this and the symbio that. And at the end of the day, it all is highly likely to develop that foreign protein. And this is, when I got one of my young mother friends to do the graphic for me with the brick wall and the man pushing against the brick wall, that was so appropriate because of how taxed and how strained the immune system is of so many mammals. This was what Dr. Pustai, he was just completely alarmed at the broad scale disruption that was caused in these rats that he fed the GMO to. He had fed the BT toxin, the natural BT, to rats. It had no adverse effect. That's why he landed on the fact that it's the unintended effects that are happening as a result of their genetic tinkering. And you've pointed out many times how dangerous this is from the fact that we've got kids that don't know if they're afoot or horseback that can access this CRISPR technology kit for $169 and be messing around with this stuff in the basement or the garage. And what do they do when they're done with it? Well, they flush it down the toilet, or who knows where it ends up. The potential mayhem that it could cause is unknown, because it is unknown. You can't track it. You can't trace it back. And the BT, okay, go way back. There's one study that I know of that was done where they looked to see if that BT protein would hang around into a subsequent crop. And it was in Canada. They had BT corn and they planted wheat behind it, which was a common rotation, that you put wheat behind corn for a number of reasons from agronomic and nutritional aspects. Well, guess what? There was an uptake of that BT protein in the wheat crop. Okay, why do we have gluten intolerance? Well, number one, you and I both know that it's likely not gluten. It could very well be glyphosate, whether it's from a sprayed on pre-harvest desiccation or an uptake from the soil, because we're getting more and more evidence every day that we have glyphosate residue virtually everywhere. Thankfully, we have identified naturally occurring marker organisms that will consistently remediate it and break it down and get rid of it. But once again, what are we raising this food for? It's a protein source. It's supposed to be a natural protein source. It's not supposed to be foreign. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten in discussions with people that are way more educated and way smarter than I am, but they can't say how this can be controlled. Well, if you can't control it, how do you know it's safe? And the again, conceptually, gain of function and GMO, they're one and the same.
A couple of points I want to bring out for listeners here. One about the studies of the BT that you mentioned. I want people to know there are very few human studies on the effect of eating GMOs on health. As a matter of fact, when Monsanto, now Bayer, launched their first study on whether GMOs were safe, the original study being done by Dr. Pustai, as you mentioned, it was on rats, and it was only a 3-month study. And then they ended it. As a matter of fact, there were some rats that died in that study that were removed. And when companies like Monsanto do find abnormal findings, let's say some labs chemistry that was abnormal, that was also in the Impossible Burger, they say, yes, indeed, there were some normal lab findings, but those are clinically not significant, and they would brush them off. That's what happened with the Impossible Burger. So that's one point. So we're eating this now since 1996, the rollout of GMOs approximately. We're eating this stuff 30 years. And there is a health crisis tsunami. The other point I want to make for listeners is that the pesticides, the glyphosate-based herbicides and others, 2,4-D, glufosinate, dicamba, are part of a system. They're part of this GMO pesticide marriage. You don't eat a GMO alone. You eat it with its associated pesticide, whether it's an insecticide, an herbicide, or both. I think the average food has 6 different pesticides in it, at least. Golf course may have 20. So just so you know that they're consumed together in a chemical system, it's a delivery system. GMOs are a delivery system, and that's all they do, to bring to your dinner plate a big dose of pesticides. And Howard can quickly speak to, because then we're going to get to solutions, Howard. We have a weed resistance problem, where the last I checked last year, 75% of weeds in America are now resistant to glyphosate-based herbicides. So farmers have had to use more toxic herbicides. So Howard, you want to comment on that? And then let's get into some solutions before we wrap up the hour.
Glyphosate doesn't kill weeds.
Now let's expand on that, Howard.
That has to be the dumbest statement anybody's ever heard when it's the most widely used herbicide in the world. Glyphosate shuts down the plant's ability to send out growth hormones, and it shuts down the plant's ability to defend itself against an attack of disease. Glyphosate significantly damages the beneficial organisms in the soil that are the protectors or the control agent to prevent disease-causing organisms to proliferate. And this was proven that glyphosate doesn't kill weeds twice with this very same experiment, and then another one supported it. They grew an edible bean in a pot that was sterile soil, and they sprayed it with Roundup, and it stopped growing for 2 weeks, and then after 2 weeks started growing again. The one that was sprayed that was in soil that wasn't sterile, it died, but it died because of the disease in the soil. As Dr. Huber and Dr. McNeil both say, okay, you're giving that plant a bad case of AIDS when you spray it with glyphosate. The study that supported the fact that glyphosate cannot kill weeds without the presence of opportunistic organisms, they sprayed Roundup and a fungicide, which stopped the opportunistic fungi from causing the disease that killed the plant. There was no herbicidal effect. So without the presence of disease-causing organisms, the weeds don't die. So when the weeds become, quote unquote, resistant to glyphosate, they have in essence become super weeds. We have this thing called the survival of the fittest. And over time, they are adapting. And instead of the amaranth pigweed is one of maybe the poster child. It used to be 3 feet tall and have 100,000 seeds on it. Today, it can get 8 to 12 feet tall and have 1 million seeds on it. Well, they're not resistant to the herbicide. They're resistant to the diseases that used to cause the problem. And that's why it becomes a snowball effect of why combinational herbicides won't work, because they're resistant to disease. The good news is we can remedy that by implementing the regenerative practices and the use of cover crops and all of the positive approaches for crop production, and will actually can generate something that's known as an allelopathic compound. Cereal rye is a tremendous example, and many plants have this, but cereal rye has become a saving crop, if you will, for farmers in many of the deep southern states where the amaranth pigweed is beating every herbicide they can throw at it. They go out and they put out cereal rye, and the allelopathic effect, natural herbicide compound, that doesn't injure good stuff, just presents the germination of the seeds of the bad, is the way they have gotten back the production capabilities on those farms. So Gabe Brown's book, again, Dirt to Soil, in my opinion, should be on the curriculum of every fifth grade class in our country. My grandkids have read it, and it's absolutely very down to earth. It's his journey of desperation, which, I started the same way. I was desperate in 1989 when I started using alternative methods. I think Gabe went down that path in 92 or 93. I don't remember which it was. And desperation drove him to the regenerative approaches. So just desperation can be your best friend if you deal with it correctly. So, and the work that's being done today in what we can do for the return to the capabilities, the natural functionality, we're working in line with the good Lord's design when we use regenerative approaches. We're building the soil organic matter. And as a result, the healthier soil, we have less flooding, which is a topic near and dear to my heart because I live in the river bottom, and all of that sick soil upstream doesn't soak in water. And as a result, you get the runoff, you get the erosion. Well, we have healthier soil from a runoff situation. We don't have the wind erosion when we have regenerative practices implemented. The nutrient density of what we're raising, when you get the full spectrum of the bacteria, fungi, protozoa, microarthropods, nematodes, amema, all functioning in the soil, we not only get macronutrients and micronutrients, we get phytonutrients. And Dr. Stephen Van Vliet is at Utah University, and he's done a phenomenal work on showing the direct correlation between how some of those phytonutrients are fighting things like diabetes and obesity. Well, the lack of their presence is the first contributing factor to their being there. And again, you throw in the foreign proteins and the contaminants and everything on top of it, and you get this snowball effect. That's why Robert F. Kennedy is so right when he says we have the sickest population in the world. And those companies in the center of the circle are benefiting financially every step of the way.
Well, thank you for that assessment, Howard. I couldn't agree more. But I want to just maybe put a conclusion. We're in the last couple of secs of our show here. And I just want to remind people is that you're in control. You're in control of what you grow, whether it's in your windowsill, your backyard, or your farm. You're in control of what you purchase in the market. You're in control of going into the farmer's market. You can use your SNAP or food stamps, depending on where you live, for a 2-to-1 return at the farmer's market. We're supporting organic regenerative farmers. So we, community, it's time to rise up off the couch, shut off Netflix, and step up and get involved. The idea that you can just go to the market and trust what's on those shelves is long gone. And that is absolutely out of the question. We have to get off the ultra-processed food wheel. We have to get back into making whole foods, and preferably organic is what I used to say. Now I say organic regenerative. And please don't forget to support your local farmers, your local CSAs, your local farmers markets, organizations like ours, GMO Science, GM Watch, that's Claire Robinson's organization, Moms Across America, that's our dear friend and former podcaster Zen Honeycutt, GMO Free USA. There are many, a US Right to Know, Center for Food Safety, Friends of the Earth. So please generously donate what you can to our organizations. Howard, let's just put your email up, how people can find you. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you, sir?
studentofthesoil@gmail.com.
There you go. And there's Howard's email, and there was Stephanie Seneff as well. And our friend to the show is, as you guys know, we love Dr. Seneff, who was on last month. So just to wrap up here, I have a series on Substack on autoimmunity and the links to cancer. I just wrote a companion piece, just wrapped it up, which is the companion to this month's show. Actually, next month I mentioned you're going to see. I'm doing a talk on GMOs and geoengineering, which should be very interesting and something you may not have heard before. Please visit gmoscience.org. We have so much content for parents, parent handouts. We have a regenerative pediatric course, and you can reach me at info@gmoscience.org for those of you who want to reach out to me. And so I'm not going to bug you regarding donations. We exist from your generosity. Hopefully you find this information helpful and useful. And so I want to say, for those of you who get together with friends and family during this very special time to give thanks of gratitude for what we are blessed with, I send my loving wishes out to all of you. Thank you to my dear friend and colleague, Howard Vlieger, who is a stalwart farmer and researcher and a dear friend. And of course, behind the scenes, thank you, Ann Temple. Until next month, see you all soon.